afternoon, everyone. So I think we've got a couple more attendees arriving, but I'm sure they can just jump in before we start. So I just wanted to welcome everybody to this afternoon's webinar. This afternoon is a business support clinic for everybody in the chamber, and we're going to hear off some influential people within the chamber team today. So before we get started, just a couple of things you should know. For those of you that have not used Zoom before, we cannot see and we cannot hear you. So the only way that you can communicate with us today is via the chat function and the QEA at the bottom of your screen. Some of you will have that function, by the way, at the top of your screen as well. Via the chat function, we ask that you kindly do not put any questions in the chat function today and just do it at the Q&A. You will be able to hear from everybody today, and then we will do the Q&A afterwards. So I kindly ask that you leave all of the questions to the end. If you have got a question specifically for somebody that's speaking today, please just pop their name at the beginning. It just makes it easier for me to direct it to them. Fantastic. So let's stop sharing my screen just so you can see everybody. So you should be able to see everybody now. So I'm just going to speak directly to Tom Nading first, and he's part of the mentoring team, and then we'll go through everybody else and they'll just say what they're doing in regards to COVID and what their role is within the chamber. Tom, it's over to you.
Thanks, Laura. So as Laura's mentioned, I'm Tom Nading. I'm the project manager for the Chamber's Let's Do Mentoring project. So I thought this afternoon just give you a little bit of an insight into kind of what the Chamber's mentoring program does and how it can support you and your businesses during these unprecedented times. So we've got just over 100 experienced business mentors who are on the program, and they are either current or ex-business leaders, and they have a range of backgrounds and skill sets, and will give their time freely to support your businesses across Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire. So it's all about them giving back to the business community, which is really crucial and key during these times. So if you're facing any challenges, such as maybe cash management or finance issues or cash flow, need general business support help mitigate your risks to your business and to your staff, support with maybe marketing and social media and kind of how to approach that during these kind of difficult times of not being able to go to see clients, then get in touch, because we've got mentors who could probably help you and kind of have got their experience and knowledge to kind of guide you through some of the kind of the issues that you might be facing now. I'll just like to hesitate that they are not business consultants, so they will not be able to kind of do the work for you, but they are there to act as a sounding board, give you suggestions and advice, and help to point you in the right direction. So the way that we've kind of tailored the program for the crisis and the virus at the minute is this: you can access mentoring kind of however you would like to. It could either be a quick 30-minute phone chat, or all the way through to maybe a weekly 1-hour Skype call with one of our mentors, just so they can kind of guide you, help you, support you along that kind of challenge that you're going through. The program can be as flexible as it needs to be for both you and for the mentor. The program is fully funded, so there's no cost either to kind of access this program and the support. And in the last 3 years already, we've supported 500 businesses with mentoring and provided them with just over 6,000 hours worth of mentoring kind of through that. So again, I'll be around for the Q&A. So if you're interested in finding out more about mentoring, or if you've got any questions, then drop me them in the Q&A after. Thank you.
Fantastic. Now we'll speak to Matt Huswit. Are you ready, Matt?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm Matt Huswit. I look after the access to finance piece here from the Chamber, and also have a team of growth hub advisors that go out throughout the county giving advice and support on anything that we possibly can. Obviously, more recently, we're constantly dealing now with the support that's available from the government through COVID-19. And it's settled down a bit as far as new announcements are concerned as to support. We've got some nice amendments that I can go through with you in a second. But just to kind of give you a heads up and just to make sure that you're trying to cover everything that you're doing. Obviously, at the moment, cash flow is king. It's a bit cheesy to say, but it is king at the moment, more than ever, I would imagine. The government have put a lot of support streams in place and a lot of money that's been bandied around, be it grants or loans or support with wages and profits. But the key thing is how quickly this money is going to get out into the marketplace. So we need to make sure that you're talking to your funders, predominantly your bank, to make sure that you've got enough cash flow facility to see you through this period. The other glum thing that I'm going to say to you is, obviously, we don't know how long this is going to last for. So you need to plan for 3, 6, 9 months, remembering that when everything gets back to normal, it potentially is going to take a long time to pick back up as well. So we'll get the doom and gloom out of the way first of all, but just to make sure that you're considering that. So just to highlight a few things, utilise the time to pay. So HMRC are giving you time to pay on everything. VAT, tax, make sure you're using that. Even if you're flush in the bank account with cash at hand, I would suggest that you delay anything that you can, because we don't know how long this is going to last for. The other question that we're getting asked a lot about with regards to time to pay is there any requirement for landlords to give you anything? And no, there isn't, is the short answer. They don't have to do anything. There is some rulings from government that they can't evict you as a commercial tenant over the next 3 months. But I would suggest that you speak to them, and you speak to them soon to see if you can come to some arrangement with them as to what suits both of you. Remember, they're a business too, and they've got bills to pay just as much as you have. Small business grants. This was one of the first announcements from the government. £10,000. If you are eligible for small business rate relief or rural rate relief, you are eligible for a £10,000 grant. You must be the registered business with the rates system. You don't have to do anything. The councils will be getting in touch with you. Interestingly, the government have released the list this morning of how much money each council has got. And just as an example for you, Stoke have got 57.6 million to give out to their businesses over the next few weeks. Don't need to do anything. They will get in touch with you if eligible. If you need to chase them up or speak to them, most of the authorities have now got fantastic contact pages, emails and web pages on their websites. If you're retail, on top of the 10,000, if you qualify for the small business rate relief, if you've got a rateable value of between 15 and 51,000 and you operate in the retail, hospitality or leisure sector, there is a £25,000 grant that you are eligible for. Again, same rules apply. The local authority will get in touch with you. You don't need to do anything. They will write to you, and you just need to send them your bank details for the money to be paid in. Any problems, obviously get in touch with them directly. Self-employed, this was one of the hotly anticipated support streams that we were all waiting for, that was announced earlier this week. There is an 80% grant, which is based on the average of your last 3 years trading profits. There's a lot of questions about this: who's eligible, who isn't eligible, when you set up in business. The rules that we're being told is that it must be your main source of income. So self-employment must be your main source of income to qualify. You must have submitted a tax year 18 to 19 return. You must have traded in the year of 19 to 20, and you must be currently trading, or would be if it wasn't for the pandemic. You must also have earned less than £50,000 to be eligible. HMRC, again, are going to contact anybody that's eligible, so potentially you don't have to do anything. But every conversation that I've had with accountants recently, they don't seem to have any trust or faith in HMRC. So it might be worth you actually trying to get in touch with them just to speed things along, because again, it is all about timescales. We are being told that it's going to be June, July before any of that money is potentially going to come out into the system. So it's worth getting further information so that you can put that into your cash flow projections. Okay, so the final thing, which is really contentious at the moment, is the CBILS funding, which is the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme. So a lot of you may know that this is kind of a rejig of what used to be called the EFG scheme, the Enterprise Finance Guarantee. And it's a loan that the government put in place through the British Business Bank that you could access through your main lenders. Most of the high street banks have got this funding. If you needed some funding and you had no security available, the EFG scheme would have covered that. The government would have secured that loan. They've rejigged it a bit to make it into the CBILS loan scheme, but didn't really change much about it other than they increased the amount, so it's up to £5 million over a 6-year term, and there was some bits of it being 12 months interest-free. Originally started off at 6 months, they extended it to 12 months. There's been a lot of press and a lot of negative feedback at the moment where banks are asking people to put personal guarantees in place. They're saying that you're not eligible for that loan because you're eligible for a normal loan. There's been an announcement this morning with further details where it's been totally rejigged and rehashed, thank goodness, so it makes it a lot more accessible. So two main things to point out: they've made the existing loan scheme more accessible. They've used the word banned. They've banned the banks from requesting a personal guarantee on loans up to 250,000, which is great news. They're hoping that then extends that out to a lot more businesses. Just to give you some detail, they've had 130,000 inquiries about this loan, and they've only had approvals for 1,000. So it just shows you how difficult it was to get this funding. Second part of that, so that's made it easy for the small businesses. The second part of it is they've now introduced their large scheme. So if your company turns over more than 45 million, but less than $500 million, previously you couldn't access any funding under that scheme. You now can. I don't imagine there's going to be too many of those on the web chat, but you never know. There might be somebody turning over 45 million. So that's it really in summary. Sorry that it's gone on for too long. The key message is always cash is king. Make sure you're planning, make sure you're doing your cash flows, get your accountants, get your banks, get your funders in place as soon as possible. Get them on board so that they know where you're going and how you're going to then trade out of this at the end of it, which is the key thing. Thank you very much. I'll stay around for the Q&A, obviously, and ask me anything when ready. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Matt. I know a couple of attendees have arrived late. For those of you that have missed the beginning part of the support clinic today, it is a recordable session, so you will be able to look at it online on our website, just in case you have missed the first couple of bits. Now we'll speak to Joe from our HR team.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Joe Gill. I'm the HR advisor at Staffordshire Chambers of Commerce. I work on the Growth Hub project. Usually that involves going out seeing businesses and assisting them with the HR processes and the forms and things like that they need in place. But obviously at the minute that's completely stopped, and it seems to be all about support surrounding the coronavirus job retention scheme. It's been well publicised. Obviously it's the 80% for all PAYE staff, capped at 2,500 a month. They're going, and it's all about furloughing your workers. There'll be a designated portal. We hope to have that ready by the end of April. And I'll just give you some key points for it, and then I'm just going to hang about at the end for a bit of a Q&A. So, like I say, the aim is to get the scheme up and running by the end of April. Now, the 80% that's going to be reimbursed by HMRC, they've said it's going to be the higher of two figures, either A, the earnings in the same pay period in the previous year, or B, the average earnings in the previous 12 months, or less if they've worked for less. Now, unfortunately, one of the downfalls of the scheme is it's only applicable to employees that were on your payroll as of the 28th of February. So any new starters you've got from the 1st of March, unfortunately, they're not eligible, and there's no support at the moment for some sort of new starter furlough. However, hopefully something will come along in the pipeline. However, one flip side of that is anybody who you've made redundant due to this crisis since the 1st of March, you're allowed to re-employ them and then enrol them onto the furlough scheme. So to qualify for payment, the member of staff must be furloughed for a minimum of 3 weeks. Then they can come off furlough. So you can't rotate staff between a weekly furlough and a week in, week out if you're halving your workforce or anything like that. One thing that's worth considering though is that employees on furlough leave, you can encourage them to volunteer. They can also do some training as well, providing it doesn't generate any income for their employer. They're just the key points I'll leave you with now. However, I will hang about at the end for the Q&A. Thank you.
Brill, Joe, thank you very much. Again, there are a couple of people that have arrived late, so please look at the video. After this, you'll be able to get that from our website and the Staffordshire Chamber website. We're now going to speak to Karina from the membership team.
Hi there, good afternoon everybody. For those that don't know me, I am Karina Pavlak and I work on the membership sales team here at the Chamber. I do believe that I have one of the best roles, in all fairness, apart from Sarah and Matt. Because I normally go out and speak to lots of lovely businesses of Staffordshire who want to know a little bit more about the support on offer from the Chamber. So I get to see all the nitty-gritty and go around all the lovely factories and meet and greet everybody. People join the Chamber for many different reasons. At the moment, obviously, there has never been a better reason to join the Chamber. We are in process of bringing all of our members and indeed our non-members to make sure that they do have all the support that they need given everything that's happening right now. Normally, people would join for networking and connections. They also would join to be supported by our HR provision, which is through a company called Quest, which is one of our partners, who will look after you in everything related to HR, legal, health and safety, and HMRC. We also deal with a lot of clients that normally would be exporting. We have a great exporting team here. So we have a whole mix of different reasons why people would join. As I said, at the moment, it's very much about making sure that all of our existing members are being supported with the information that they need, and this can be a whole mix of things that we've already spoken about today. If you want to know anything more about the membership at all, I'll be around later for you to ask many questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina, lovely. Jodie from the membership team now.
Hi everybody, I'm Jodie Fox. Some of you may have met me or spoken to me recently on the helpline. So my role in the Chamber is an account manager. So after you've met Karina, you'll probably meet me because I look after my members going forward and obviously deal with any queries that they have. Helpline. So at the minute I'm supporting members. I work as part of the Growth Hub as well, so I'm undertaking one-to-one consultations through the Growth Hub support, also looking after the phone lines at the Chamber and picking up any funding and finance queries that you might have. We've had quite a lot of calls this week and last week, as you may well imagine. Again, a lot of information out there and information that is constantly changing. If you didn't catch the webinar from Chris Beeston yesterday at Geens, that was a really informative webinar, and he went through quite a lot of the different schemes, the CBILS loan, the grants from a tax advisor's professional point of view. Really, he gave quite an insight into that and what you can and can't do, what you should and shouldn't be doing. So if you haven't seen it, please watch it back on the playback, because that's really helpful and does obviously give quite a lot of advice as well. As Matt said, there's been quite a lot of changes with the CBILS loan, which is great news because we're having a lot of calls from people who have exhausted every avenue. They've been to the banks, they just fall outside of the grants for the small business rates. And it can be quite frustrating and disappointing to people when they are just £1,000 short of the funding, so they're not quite sure what to do. For those members, we are trying to obviously push those issues forward to the British Chamber in the hope that things can change, and I think the process is working. There's been quite a lot of feedback obviously with regards to the CBILS loan, and it's great that they've now made those changes and changed the criteria for that, really, so that it's now available to more businesses, which is great because, again, as Matt said, cash is king, and at the minute we need to be putting those provisions in place. There's quite a lot of people that I've spoken to who are quite worried about getting into debt, and they don't want to extend the lending facilities that they've got. But at this time, I think it's imperative that you do speak to your banks. If it is a possibility to put those overdrafts in place or short-term cash flow solutions to get you through, you know that hopefully that money will be coming through further down the line in July. But right now, you need to have that funding in place and just have those provisions ready. Again, I'm having lots of questions about furlough workers, what to do, what your responsibilities are. As a chamber member, hopefully you've all got your Quest logins. One of the first things that you have to do is inform your workers by letter, and there is a template on Quest, on the Quest website, so you can actually get that template to issue to your workers, and you can just adapt it and make it obviously fit to your logos and things like that. But that's really helpful. So Quest are still available and taking calls. For those of you who don't know, the telephone number is 01455 852 037, so you can go through and speak to a qualified advisor. Another thing I will say, which Chris pointed out yesterday on his webinar, was that there's quite a few areas where it's not clear about how the furlough is going to work, and if companies are going to get audited. What he suggested is that you do speak to a legally trained advisor, As a member, you've got your member-to-member portal, so you can find those companies who are available to give legal advice. And although a lot of them are working from home, they're still there and available to give you that advice. So please have a look. There's lots of different companies, and you can give them a call. So as always, we're all here to help. If you've got any questions, or you just need a sounding board, or you're not quite sure if you're making sense of the information, which is, again, it can be quite confusing, then do give us a call. Usual chamber number 01782 202 222, and just select the option that's relevant to you. Even if it's a telephone number for other members who've got mobiles, give me a call. Thank you, Laura.
Wonderful, Jodie. Thank you ever so much. And lastly, but not least at all, is Sarah Williams, our Chief Executive, who's just going to say a couple of words about the Chamber. Sarah, it's over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Laura. Afternoon, everybody. Well, the Chamber has gone from being a paper-based, face-to-face organisation to being entirely digital, and in less than a week. So we understand a lot of the issues that you as business people are also facing, because we've been through them too. And we are still going to do that as a business. We have to make sure that we can function, and our main function is to make sure that we are there to give support and advice to the business community. I thought I'd talk a little bit about some of the lobbying work that we've been doing with the British Chambers of Commerce, because there have been quite a few successes and quite a few issues that we're still looking at, and would look to you for some information, and if you can give us some case studies and examples, that would be really helpful. So we've done a lot of work on trying to persuade the banks to move faster on CBILS and other programmes, also talking to them and through the British Business Bank and through UK Finance to really get the banks to understand the impact that their following usual practices might be having on businesses. One of the things that we've picked up quite a bit recently is that banks are charging quite exorbitant amounts of money for overdraft arrangement fees and for overdraft interest. We've been quoted between 15 and 30%, which is massive. So if you're finding any of those, we need to know that so that we can tell the relevant authorities and the regulatory bodies about those sorts of issues. Some of the other topics that we're looking at now are around what gaps still exist in the provision that the government is putting forward. Adam Marshall, the Director General of the BCC, has a daily call with the Chancellor of the Exchequer at the moment, because he really wants to find out what businesses are saying. And as part of that, we're really pleased that BCC have launched their Impact Business Tracker, and the first report came out this week, and it will be every week that it will be done. So if you get a questionnaire about it, please fill it in, because it is one of the sources of live information that is being really used by the Bank of England and the Chancellor at the moment. So all the usual metrics, all the usual ways of getting information have gone out of the window. So they're really looking for how they can find these new mechanisms to make them work, and they see the chambers as being important in all of that. Some of the other things that we've been talking about recently are the small businesses who are based in enterprise centres, who may be paying their rents and their rates together, and therefore aren't eligible for any of the rate relief schemes that Matt's talked about. We're lobbying on their behalf at the moment. We're also picking up quite a lot about the issues around trade insurance and credit insurance, and about how some of the issues around that are being changed at the moment. We had one company who said that they were being given more time to report on late payments. That wasn't so important, but that their insurance level had been slashed by 25%. So it's those sorts of issues that we really need to understand and see how, as the pandemic has developed and as the issues in the economy are changing, how that is also affecting businesses, so that we can help about all of that. Finally, one of the other, two final points, sorry. One is that we've been working a lot on credit ratings. So if you have taken out a loan through a peer-to-peer lending organisation like Funding Circle, for example, they will allow you to have a negotiated late payment period, but they are also saying that they still have to report that as a break in payments, which will affect future credit ratings. So we're now trying to lobby with the credit organisations to make sure that they take that on board and understand the implications that that will have for future growth and investment in businesses. And the final thing that we're really picking up now is the breakdown in supply chain. There are a lot of businesses who are still working. The economy has taken a massive, massive hit, but there are still businesses who are working, and we need to support them as well. But one of the major issues is about supply chain breakdown, people not being able to get the parts or components and therefore not being able to keep their production going. And that is really important. And then my final plea is that although we know that there is a whole issue about payments and late payments, that it is really that, as especially for Staffordshire businesses, that we keep paying each other, because it's really important that people know that they can rely on each other, if at all possible, to pay their bills and to be paid. And that's really important for us to keep the cash in the economy and to keep us all going. Thank you, Laura.
Brilliant, thank you. So now we'll get on to the Q&A part of the webinar. So we'll just wait for a couple of people. I assume we'll just bring some questions. I know it takes a while for the questions to usually come through. But while we're waiting for the rest of the questions, we have got 3 questions already. Jill, I've just noticed your question obviously came halfway through the webinar. Can you just confirm what you mean as to where that applies to? Jill just asked the question, Matt, about applying for corporation tax, but I just want to see what context she's talking about that question.
I'm assuming it'll be on, does this count in the time to pay the corporation tax along with your VAT and your PAYE? The information that we're getting is that all taxes are included and that you can discuss any of your taxes with HMRC. So there's a hotline number which is 0800 024 1222, but we're being told that you can discuss any due or overdue taxes with them. Yes.
Wonderful, fantastic. Peter Boyce is just asking, I would like to take advantage of the CBILS, but my bank, Handelsbanken, does not support the scheme. How can I apply for this scheme?
Yeah, so it's really frustrating for Handelsbanken customers, really, because I believe they're in the process of registering to offer the CBILS loan, but it's obviously not in place as we speak, and it's probably not going to be a quick fix, unfortunately. There's a couple of points here. Is yes, there are lots of other lenders that you can go to. If you go onto the British Business Bank's website and key in CBILS, there's 40 plus providers, the majority of the high street banks, plus what we would class as some second tier lenders that will allow the CBILS loans. The problem you've got here is that because your main relationship is with Handelsbanken, you're probably not going to get much joy from another bank that doesn't have your main banking relationship with them, because for all intents and purposes it is a standard loan. So in that scenario, that would then force you down to that second tier, which, okay, it's available and it's brilliant that it's available, but once your interest-free period then expires, you're potentially then looking at a higher interest rate cost compared to what your normal high street bank would do. So it's probably worth having a look at the alternative providers and see what rates they could do. Obviously, the main benefit of the CBILS loan is that it's interest-free for 12 months. But if they're going to then charge you a ridiculously high rate because you're a non-customer, the decision would have to be taken as to whether you would just go and get a normal loan from Handelsbanken that would probably be at not interest-free, but more favourable rates.
Brilliant, Matt, thank you. One for you, Joe, from Rob Thompson. You mentioned staff on furlough can volunteer. I assume that they can only volunteer at other organisations. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Laura. I mean, there's obviously the NHS volunteer scheme, which has had over 750,000 people volunteer. I also know that Staffordshire County Council were after collating people who are interested in volunteering last week. If you do want to encourage your employees to volunteer and there are any registers of interest, please email the business inquiries email. I'll read it out now and I'll type it in the chat when I finish as well. So that's business inquiries at stokestaffslep.org.uk, and like I say, I'll jot it down in the chat now for everybody as well.
Brilliant, fantastic, Joe. Any other questions? For those of you that have never used the chat function, it should be at the bottom of your screen, and it's really easy. You just need to type in a question there. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes just to see if there's anybody else that wants a question answering. So Phil is just saying, my bank won't lend for the emergency fund. What should I do? Matt?
I'm assuming this is the CBILS loan as well then, which again, I've just referred back to the previous answer, which if you go on the British Business Bank website, there are alternative lenders. another big problem here with the CBILS loan is that there's still a credit process that you have to go through. So it's not a kind of lend of last resort. The bank will still expect to see projections and some evidence that you're going to pay that loan back. And they do, unfortunately, have the right to say no to that loan. If your main bank has refused you on the CBILS loan, then on that list of 40 plus providers, there are ones that specialise in providing assistance for companies that have been refused by their main bank. Just off the top of my head, one of the more local ones is a company called BCRS that we work very closely with through the Growth Hub programme, and they specialise in helping companies that have had a no from a bank, but they will charge you a slightly higher rate, but at least it's some money that's coming through, and obviously you can still take advantage of the 12-month holiday as well. So I would suggest you look on their website, on the BBB website, and just find an alternative provider if possible.
Well, Matt, we've got a couple of other questions for you. The 10 grand rates grant, you have more. If I have multiple premises, do I get 10 grand for each site that qualifies? If retail, can you claim extra if it's retail?
So there's a couple of considerations here, which we're not going to be the experts on this, and I would probably ask you to refer to your local authority. The two main points and the two problems here is I have read certain terms and conditions that suggest that if you have more than one property, then you potentially aren't eligible for the grant funding. So you may need to check that first and see if you are eligible as to how many, obviously, awards you can get. If they're in different authorities, you may also have to be speaking to one or more different authorities as well to ascertain that information. So I wouldn't commit either way myself, so I would just recommend that you speak to the local authority to find out from them.
Brilliant. Matt, another question for you. Saying we are a chamber member, we offer performance, car tuning, parts workshop, online sales, but we are not a dealership. Our retail sales are probably 75%. Would we be listed as a retail business or not, and therefore would we be eligible for the small business grant?
Your eligibility for the small business grant is regardless of sector. There's the £10,000 small business grant, and your eligibility of that is if you're in commercial premises and you are classed as receiving small business rate relief. So if your rateable value is less than 15,000, which you then get full rate relief on, then there is no reason why you wouldn't be eligible for that grant. It depends on how you're registered with the relevant authorities as to whether they class you as a retail business or not. Again, I would just refer you back to your local authority to ask those questions, but it would either be the 10 or the 25 regardless of whether they saw you as you should get the 10 regardless of whether you're retail, as long as you're in commercial premises and obviously qualify for small business rate relief. There's a lot of caveats.
Well, I'm not sure if any of us can answer this one. Is there an official template for key workers who use their own vehicles to go to and from work, or can we use something we have set up internally? Joe?
Hello, yeah, I think I can field that one. Excuse me. The way he's announced the lockdown, there's nothing actually official documentation-wise that you can carry. If there will be something released in the future, chances are it will be released by the Cabinet Office. Now, I can only speak for what I've heard, what other businesses are doing now. Luckily, my brother's in haulage and they deliver drums to AstraZeneca and other pharmaceutical places. Now, what they've done is they've created a headed letter signed by their CEO explaining what their business does and what supply chain they're in, etc. And all drivers are now carrying that round with them in the cabs, should the situation arise where they do get stopped by the police. But like I say, there's nothing official in place at the minute, but anything internal you can create your own surely would just help explain the situation a little bit better.
Well, fantastic. Jill Jones says in the chat, this might be a bit too specific. Let's have a look. A member of staff that has resigned, that was due to leave today, she has asked if I will furlough her instead of her, as her new employee won't be able to. What would the cost be to my business? Presumably accrued holiday, but is there anything else I should be considering or aware of?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing been set aside yet to say holiday won't be accrued during this time. So you've got to see how it sits within existing employment law, this furlough scheme. So as it stands at the minute, she would be accruing holiday. The only other thing I can think of really to consider, Jill, is should you have to make people, you know, will she resign at the end of her furlough, you know, or will you have to make her redundant? And you'd have to obviously factor in the length of service, whether the additional 3 months would you know, increase the length of service to either over 2 years or more, maybe to put her in another redundancy bracket. That's the only thing to consider. I mean, if she has resigned, you're well within your rights to not accept that resignation and put her on the furlough scheme. But another consideration is to what happens after. Well, if, you know, she's resigned and you'd replaced her, what's that situation going to be at the end? That's just something you'll need to think about, obviously knowing the specifics of it.
Brilliant, fantastic, Joe. Let me just see if there's any more questions that I've missed. Has anybody got any more questions? There isn't any more questions in the Q&A, so I'm just going to check just from the attendees if anybody does want to ask a question. Bear with me. Rob, if you've got a question, could you pop it in the Q&A for me? Just because it's in the chat that you're typing. The Q&A is right next to your chat function down at the bottom.
Just whilst we're waiting, Laura, I've just noticed in the chat that Phil's commented that he's in serviced accommodation and rates and rent are all classed as one payment, and that it's really unfair. And yeah, I agree with you, and this is exactly what Sarah raised earlier, is that we're lobbying to try and see what can be done in these circumstances. If you're in these serviced offices or you're multi-occupied and you pay a combined rent and rate payment to your landlord, if the landlord is the registered rate payer, then they're the ones that are potentially going to get the grant payment. That'd be lovely if they then disperse that down to you, but there's no legal requirement to do that. So we're trying to see, and they are aware of it, but there's nothing further on that as we speak. So if anything does come on that, we can obviously get that out through the usual channels.
Yeah, just adding to that, Phil, if you want to drop me a note about who your landlord is, that would also be helpful, because we're picking up that sometimes it's private landlords, but sometimes it is local authorities, which obviously gives us a different leverage that we can bring to bear on that. So do let us know.
Brilliant. Has anybody got any more questions? I just noticed there's an anonymous question just at the bottom, just about if they were going to start a disciplinary on a member of staff, how would furlough work? I don't know whether that's something you can answer, Joe.
It's a bit of a tricky one, that one, to be honest. It depends on obviously the level of disciplinary you are looking to go for, and is it reasonable, and can you still carry that out within social distancing guidelines. Ultimately, the other way you could do it is you could suspend the investigation, pandemic pending, and then reconvene once everything else gets back to normal. But again, like with Jill's question, there are things to consider: holiday accruement, length of service.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Joe. We'll just give it one more minute. If not, we'll look to finish. So just anybody else that does want to ask a question, you've just got a minute left before we close the webinar down today. So just checking if anybody else has got a question. Oh, just one more, Matt, for you. If we qualify for the 10K, how long until it's paid?
We don't know. We would like to think that the money has now been paid down by government down to the local authorities. There is no reason for the local authorities to hang on to this cash. They can't use it for anything else. It's got to be distributed out to the eligible businesses. So they're going to be requesting you to provide them with bank details and everything that they need to pay that money over to you. So we would like to think shortly. Just whilst I say that as well, one thing we are reminding businesses is that a lot of this support, and there's a lot of free money that's being bandied around, and just to be wary of any fraud Because if anybody's sending you emails asking you for your bank details or to click on links, just make sure that they're coming from the relevant authorities or from the relevant people that you should be expecting those links from. You can guarantee that there'll be a lot of people out there using it as an opportunity to commit fraud, unfortunately. So hopefully answer to your question as soon as possible, but just be wary about the fraud side as well.
Brilliant. And Martin, one of our attendees, has just said that you can also apply for that online. And he has done so online, so it's proof that you can actually do that. And Sherry has just given a bit of useful information. So she has just said Newcastle Underline have said that they will pay on the 6th of April. So I don't know whether that's just because obviously she's obviously got in quite early on with that. So let's just see if there's anybody else. Nope, so I think that's it for the Q&A today. Like I say, every time we do a webinar, there are webinars pretty much every day at 2 p.m. and you can find them on the Staffordshire Chamber website. Is anybody got anything else they want to say before we go today? Any of the panelists want to say anything? No, all good to go. Right, absolutely fantastic. Thank you all so much for attending today. And like I said, you can pick up a recording of this on our webinar library on our website. So good luck to you and have a lovely weekend.